welcome everyone to our Q&A this morning. And I'm very excited to have Debbie Austin, LPGA Tour, as our featured guest this morning. And I just want to go back a little bit into history of, just so that people know a little bit more about you. When she was 16 years old, she lived in upstate New York, and you won the New York State Amateur. At that point, I think you moved to Florida, okay, where you won then the Florida State Amateur, but you won it by 10 strokes in 1965.
High school amateur.
Say it what? Oh, high school amateur, sorry, championship, okay. She now lives in Orlando, Florida, but got on the tour. It's kind of interesting because in your bio, it starts out by that you're 5 feet 4 inches tall. That's how tall you are.
Yeah,
but
I'm a little spark plug. Boom.
Okay. But you had your most successful season after you got on tour in 1977 with 5 wins, 5 titles. And again, you won in 1981 at the Mayflower Classic. But you also, I don't have the right year for this, the Australian Open.
1978.
So you were good in the 70s. All right, Golf Digest in 1977 named you the most improved, and Golf Magazine in 1977 also named you Player of the Year. So with those accolades, let me welcome my friend, Debbie Austin.
Well, I'm happy to do it. Kay's a wonderful person, and if you've been taking instruction from her, you know she's going to get you going and get you better and better every day you play.
Let me ask you a couple first questions. I'm gonna ask you a couple first questions about, talk about being nervous and excited, or other people watching them. And you won 5 times or 6 times of whatever it was in the 70s, which was great. But how was it winning your first tournament? How did it change your life? What were your emotions? What was going on?
Well, to be honest with you, it was a dream come true. I had played in quite a few LPGA events up until my first win, and I'd finished a lot of second places and third places, but couldn't quite get over the edge. And once I got over the edge, it was like everything just sort of opened up. I started to believe that I could win, and man, everything came together. Having those five wins in 77 was just amazing. And coming down the road, beating players like Nancy Lopez and Kathy Whitworth, and one of the tournaments I won, I got to play with Mickey Wright, who at the time, and still unfortunately she's passed away, but was my idol. And that was in Indiana. And it was just a great year for me.
A lot of those names people don't remember, but Mickey Wright had one of the finest swings, and Kathy Whitworth has the most all-time wins at 88. People, when they talk about Sam Snead or something else, they forget to bring Kathy Whitworth in because she had 88. But for you, what changed? Did something change your game? I know that you list a lot of interesting, very well-known instructors from, well, people don't know who Sherry Wilder is. I do. And you can tell that story of how we were about a mile away way back in the 70s when you were taking lessons. Renan Phil Ritson and the late Ellen Griffin, who was a very famous teacher. How did any of that change instruction, or why did you keep taking instruction?
Well, I think Sherry, I had started out, obviously, growing up in New York. My family got me with a local club pro who got me started in golf, and then I went on to another pro at another club who really kind of helped me a lot with my short game and got me just playing so much better. I worked with him almost from 8 in the morning until night. We did a lot of lessons, and then he would go out and put me in places on the golf course and say, all right, how are you going to hit this shot? What are you going to, how do you go about hitting this low shot or this high shot? It was phenomenal. And then I went on tour in 1968 and played pretty well. And as I said, I had a lot of seconds and thirds, but couldn't quite get it over the finish line. And at the Dinah Shore, which was our biggest tournament in Palm Springs, I missed the cut and I was devastated. And I ended up, after that tournament, I started working with Sherry Wilder. And Sherry was probably the most positive person in the world. And she sat down with me and she said, this is what we're going to do. And we started going over a lot of the fundamentals and things that are so important in the golf swing, as you all well know. And it just got in my head, and I loved it. And then I went on to back on tour. I finished 10th in a tournament in Raleigh, then went third at this tournament at Moss Creek, Plantation in Hilton Head, and then I won my first event in Birmingham, Alabama, which was how important an instructor can be and how positive. Sherry said to me after my first win, she said, Debbie, you've got one under your belt, you know you can do it, go on and continue. And boy, it was amazing. And that year was from April until the end of the year. I won 4 more, and then actually won the first event in Miami, which was the American Cancer Society tournament. And from there we flew to Australia, where I won the Australian Women's Open. So that was all the 7 events in less than a year. So it was a fabulous time of my life.
It's kind of fun when you talk about Sherry Wilder, because she was such a positive person. And I came from Minneapolis, and I played in a pro-am. I was an amateur at the time, and it was the Keller Open, now known as it was then the Patty Berg Open. And I got to play with Sherry Wilder, who was her nickname was Bubbles, right? that just explains her whole personality. But then as I started to get into the golf business, I worked at Ironwood Country Club, which was a mile above where Sherry Wilder was the head golf professional, where you took lessons way back in Palm Springs and stuff like that. So it's kind of interesting how this golf world is really kind of goes full circle, goes all the way around. And it's kind of staying on instruction and stuff like that. Your love of the game is unbelievable, because we reconnected when I was back in Orlando, which is a couple miles away from where you're a member at Orange Tree. And what did you come to me with? You wanted more distance? Wasn't that right?
Right.
That was only a couple of years ago. So you're still taking lessons.
Oh yeah.
And I'm going to throw you under the bus this morning. When we first started talking out, because you got on early, the first question is, she said, have you heard about the power stick? Because I'm supposed to get 20 to 30 yards more distance. So do you think it's really possible to get 20 to 30 yards more distance now?
Well, with my physical conditions, yes. For those that don't know, I've been having a lot of shoulder problems. And in fact, I had shoulder surgery in August and haven't been able to play golf since then. And, I know that my club head speed is not going to be that great when I come back to golf. So I'm just wondering whether or not that could make a difference. Does anybody else have any good things out there that have made a difference in your club head speed?
They all ask about club head speed. They all want more speed. There's two things in golf, as we know: distance and direction, right? And so everybody wants, obviously,
Center
more.
club face.
Center of the club face. That's exactly right, and it's an underrated topic of discussion. But tell me, when the first win or one of your wins, can you talk a little bit about what kind of emotions you were going through, or how you kept it together? Or were you nervous, or were you confident, or were you scared? Do you remember?
Well, probably a little bit of every one of those. It was so important for me, and I look back on that tournament in Birmingham, which was the first one, and I think about how somebody had said to me, what in every event, and you look at it, and it kind of is constant. Somebody that's leading may just go off the rails. They may just have a bad hole, and that screws their day up, and they don't win. And so that happened to be that day Carol Mann, who was leading the tournament. And she was playing with me, and she had an 8 or a 9 on a par 4, and that was it. And I knew after that if I could just keep my game going, I was playing really well, but not putting great, but I just had enough hitting the greens and making a lot of pars and a few birdies, and boy, it just happened.
It's kind of interesting because a lot of people don't know Carol Mann, and now she's deceased, and she's also, I think, past president of the LPGA at one point. I mean, you were also on the board, but Carol Mann was 6'3",
right?
And you were 5'4", so you guys must have been. They could have definitely told who was who on the golf course that day, right?
We did a clinic in Syracuse, New York, and we called it the Mutt and Jeff Show.
See, well, and you're both of you with great personalities. You have this constant smile, and Carol Mann was very charming, very knowledgeable, also instructor. So that must have been great. Did you ever, was that videotaped at all?
No.
That's way too bad. Those things should have been.
No, unfortunately, I think I do have some tapes from my win in Indianapolis, but that's the only thing. So that was back in 1981. They just didn't do that at the time.
Life on tour has definitely changed, because I had some young players that said, well, Kay, when you were playing, who was on your team? And I said, I was on my team. And they said, who made your travel arrangements? And I said, I made my travel arrangement. And who was your physical therapist, or who was your sports psychologist? I said, me, myself, and I. It was the three people. Can you talk a little bit about life on tour during the 70s and 80s and how it's changed from what you know?
Sure. I had a roommate that we would travel in a car together, and we would go from tournament to tournament. And I remember, and this was amazing, we played in Los Angeles, California, and the next tournament was in Louisville, Kentucky. Now, we had a pro-am on a Wednesday. So if you can imagine, we drove straight through, and we got into Louisville about 9 o'clock in the morning on a Wednesday, and had to tee it up that day in the pro-am. So that was some of the things yes, I made all my reservations. No actual swing coaches. I know that there are a lot of people that play now have swing coaches that come out, watch them every week. No, that never happened. Massage therapist, that would have been wonderful, but that never happened either. So, I mean, there were a lot of things that people are playing now have all these folks that are in their, what am I going to say, in their corral that are helping them in so many different ways. So it's a whole different lifestyle. And you just, I mean, it was amazing what I experienced. We used to have cookouts at hotels. You know, we didn't eat out of restaurants. We cooked our own meals, and that was fun. We all got together and had a great time. But this is back in the 70s and 60s, late 60s. So you know, there were just so many things that are so different than today. We didn't go on airplanes. It was just pretty much all cars.
I kind of, when you said you won the Australian Open, and I know you didn't take a car there, but
No.
it probably took you forever in plane to get there.
Right,
At the time.
and a long plane flight. And I remember arriving at like 8 in the morning. We went to our hotel, I took a shower, and then right out to the golf course for a practice round. And we came back at like 4 o'clock. We had dinner, and then I went right to bed, woke up, and the week for me was magical. That's all I can say. I mean, it just, everything went together, played great, and you know, I can't tell you, it was great, and I love Australia.
I can see why. Well, let me do this. I have everybody on mute right now, but what I'd like to do is to see if anybody has a question. You can raise your hand. Yeah, Stacy, why don't you go? I can see your hand. Take yourself off mute. Yeah, raising your hand, and then.
I wanted to ask you, because of the development of the new women's golf clubs, what were you playing with in the 60s and 70s compared to now? And how do you think that, of course, alters the effect of the length of shots and the game? Were you playing with men's clubs? What was the scene then?
I did have some men's clubs. I mean, clubs were a lot different then. They didn't have ladies' clubs, so we had heavier clubs. I remember this one pro that I was working with, he put me in a 45-inch driver. Now, knowing how short I am, that's a long club. So if you didn't, I could hit it further, but boy, if it wasn't right on the club face, it was going all over the place. But so I think clubs have definitely improved. Shafts, they have really worked on shafts, and I think it's made it a lot easier for women to play the game. You know, you want a club that's easy to hit, and you know, they've done a great job with that. Hopefully I answered your question.
You did. Thank you very much.
That was good. I think you're right about, because I was still even an amateur when graphite just first came out. So graphite shafts for women have definitely helped, because the first clubs that I had were hand-me-downs from my mother's, and they were basically lead pipes is what they were, you know. So, you know, to be able to hit them and get them airborne was actually now pretty good talent. But anybody else have a good question? Myra, you can take yourself off mute. I can see your hand.
Hi. So in 1977, you won in less than a year, 7 tournaments.
Yes.
If you were, it's amazing. If you were not a woman, meaning if you were a man, your life would have been very different at that time than it was, despite all your victories. How did that make you feel? I mean, you know, it's crazy. You're driving through the night and having cookouts, and not going out. It's just, it's just so frustrating, isn't it?
Well, it was, but the fact that I could win, and I did get a few bonuses from some companies, but not like the amount that they're getting today. It's incredible. When I won all those tournaments in 1977, I won, let's see, I'm trying to think. It was about $100,000. My whole career earnings were, when I kind of finished my career, were just a little over $500,000. I remember talking to a friend of mine who had just won a tournament, and I said, holy mackerel, you won more in one event than I won in my whole life time of playing golf. So it's frustrating, but it was also very rewarding that I could accomplish something that I wanted to do. And that was, my parents did not want me to play the tour. In fact, they were very much against it. But when I went to a women's open, and I saw Patty Berg walking up the 18th hole of Baltusrol, I said to my folks when we got home, that's what I want to do. And that was when I was 12 or 13 years old. And I worked for that goal, and I got that goal. And I mean, when you hear these people today, they say, if you can believe in something, you can do it. And I totally believe that.
That's great. Thank you. And a follow-up to that. Yeah. Did the men's leaders at the time, did they acknowledge your wins? Did they, what was your relationship with them?
Well, quite honestly, we weren't anywhere near them. We were always in little towns, and they were in the big towns. We were in, so it was the only time that they acknowledged some of it was when I would play in not a pro-am, where we would get together. I played with Lee Trevino or Tom Watson. We played together, and that's when they would say, "Oh yeah, you've done quite well." But that's basically it.
Well, you're proud of yourself, and we're proud of you. So that's what counts.
Thank you, Mara. That's very kind.
I could talk a little bit about Patty Berg, because the grade school that I went to was a mile from the golf course. She grew up in Minneapolis. But I can remember my parents bringing me as a young girl and watching Patty Berg at one of the country clubs doing a clinic. If you've never seen a Patty Berg clinic, I mean, she taught the whole tour how to do clinics, because she was just, besides being a great golfer, a great woman, but I'll never forget taking her visor and going, okay, I need to hit it to the right. I need to hit it to the left. I need to hit it high. And she would just carry on. And then when she would do speeches, and if somebody was kind of shy, she'd say, go across in the other pond, and when I can hear you talking, that's when you can do a speech. But she was an inspiration to a lot of people. So there were a lot of great names that played then. Does anybody else have a question? Hand up. Candy, take yourself off mute. Candy and Steve.
Actually, it's Steve.
Hey, Steve.
Oh, yeah. I like your hat, Steve.
Yeah, hi, Debbie. I wear it all the time except to bed. Debbie, my question is, I've seen a lot of people, and you have too, that had a lot of talent, including on the LPGA Tour that you thought, geez, if I had their game, or they have so much talent and yet they don't win, or they don't even advance to the LPGA or the other tours. And you had a fantastic year in '77. And what do you think the difference is between, because you know before and the year that you had and the years after that and all the people that you've seen and talked to over the years, what do you think the difference is, why some people make it and why some people don't? Besides putting, I think maybe I'm talking about the mental side of the game. You obviously had a confidence role in '77.
That's a great question. And you're right. I saw quite a few players that I thought should have really made it. In fact, Bubbles, my instructor, had enormous talent, and it was like she would get out there and she might shoot a 67 one day and the next day shoot an 82. And it was, I think a lot of it was mental. You know, the fact, as I said, you have to kind of believe in yourself, you know, because you're the only one out there. You're the one pulling the sticks, although your caddy does help you. But you're the one that has to live with the shots that you hit. And a lot of people can't, I think a lot of people can't deal with that all the time. You know, you wonder why somebody like a Rory McIlroy with his great swing and all just can't win more. I wonder about that. We have a gal that plays and practices here in Orange Tree. Her name is Amy Yang. And I think Amy has one of the best golf swings on tour, and yet she just can't seem to win. She's won once, I think, and she works harder than any one person. And, you know, it's so, why is it? Is it that they get just really nervous when they get up there? I don't know what's going on in their head, but
Achievement, both of those people, but Mickey Wright is just so talented. Everybody just in awe of Mickey Wright.
well, I'm glad you got to see Mickey Wright when she was playing, because she was awesome to watch, and unfortunately she didn't play as much as we would have liked on the tour. She gave it up, I think, way too early.
Yeah, I agree. So let's open it up. Somebody else have a question?
I had a little question.
Oh, wait.
Debbie, you talked about your caddies. Did you have a caddy continually, or did you have, and you said they certainly helped some, but tell us about how you worked with the caddy, because I've never experienced anything.
Well, originally I would take local caddies, because local caddies, you know, expenses for me were high, you know, or they weren't high, but they were probably, I would pay a caddy $10 a day, which is nothing, you know. Then as we progressed, I had a caddy and I would pay him according to what I won, and I would pay him a percentage. So, and what did they do? They kept the yardage book. They would sometimes walk the golf course to check out the pin placements, but not as much as what I'm seeing the caddies do on the tours today. And they could influence you, you know, in your club selection, Eloise. But in the end, you had the final, and if it wasn't right, it's coming out of your paycheck sometimes.
Right. I think you make a good point though about caddies, because people see it on tour all the time, and we always say that it's the 15th club in your bag sometimes. And I know that when when I didn't have a caddy, when I was trying to get on the tour, that all of a sudden when I had a really good tour caddy that was really a professional caddy, does make a big difference. And people at the time, they see with the yardage books now, well, we used to walk the golf course and you'd pace it off and you'd go from this sprinkler head or that. Now that's all done for you. You've got the book, you've got this sprinkler head, they know where every blade of grass is. And when they see the yardages, their yardages are always to the front of the green, whereas our 150 yard markers, which people don't realize, is to the center of the green. So there's quite a bit more scientific data that goes into it. And then if you had a caddy that couldn't add or subtract the yardages, you were in trouble. Anybody have a question?
I want to know where Roberta is with that beautiful clubhouse in the background.
Hello. This was a few months ago, but
Okay.
I am in Northern Virginia, and this is our flagship course, Laurel Hill Golf Club.
Wonderful.
It's a top-rated municipal.
Roberta, tell them what you do.
So I'm the golf marketing specialist for 7 golf courses, 7 municipal golf courses under the Fairfax County Park Authority.
Great.
And it was really great to hear you, very inspiring. And you helped pave the path to all these current players with all their fancy clubs and caddies and bigger paychecks, thanks to you.
Agreed. Right. So anybody else with another question? Let me go ahead and scroll through here. Lynn Cotter.
My question is kind of on the mental side as well. I just recently started competing kind of in my local club or my local ladies league. And it was just a couple of years ago that I started, and I was kind of proud of myself this past year. I actually made 2nd place in pretty much everything I competed in. But now I'm wondering, okay, 2nd place is great. And the fact that I actually entered them was good because, trying to get a hold on your nerves and all of that. So what you said that once you broke that barrier, you were kind of off and flying. How did you break that barrier? I know it's probably on the mental side.
Well, it was, but also, Lynn, I don't know whether you can go back and check out your rounds golf that you had when you came in 2nd. And there were a lot of occasions. Go back and see if there's anything in your playing that maybe could have given you another stroke around that would have become the winner, maybe with 4 shots or 3 shots better. So it might be, okay, maybe I need to work on my chipping. Maybe I need to work on my sand play. There are different ways that you can reach your goal. And if you have that goal, write it down. Here's a good thing that I got many, many years ago in a fortune cookie. Be persistent and you will win. So if you can write your goals down, so now you've been in 2nd, which is terrific. Now go for the 1st place and write it down. Put it on your refrigerator. Put it in your iPhone and say, okay, here's my goal right here, and this is what I want to do. And I guarantee you, if you just keep thinking that way, it's going to happen.
That's wonderful. I do. It was very interesting. The club championship, which was one of them, it was a new experience. We had 100 spectators watching.
Oh, great.
And I actually thought, if I had thought about it ahead of time, knowing that there were going to be spectators, I probably would have freaked out. Like I thought, oh, I'm going to be the person that's like shaking and nervous. I actually kind of loved it. Like after I got used to the fact that they were there, I was like, oh, okay, I can do this. But I think I actually got too revved up. So I got a little, too much. I didn't stay kind of in the zone or whatever. So, but one of the things that I did try to do is actually write out what happened after the round,
Terrific.
just so that I can kind of refer back to it.
Wonderful. That's great. And one of the things that, and I'm sure you all do this when you're with Kay and you're getting instructions, write down what you learned or what you went over that day, so you can always refer back to it. I have stacks of notes from Sherry. I have the cards now from Kay that I had a couple of years ago. So these are the things that you can refer back to. And also make sure again that all your fundamentals are correct, because that helps so much in playing good and better golf.
I can, if you can let me cut in a little bit on this. When you first came to me, she had 4 clubs in her hand, and a picture from the newspaper. I can't remember who it was, but it was a professional golfer it was on after Sunday. And the extension point, which we all know are position 3 for those of you that are golf 8.5ers, or the extension point. And she hands it to me in the card and she said, "This is how I want to look again." So she had a very definite want, a definite goal, and we actually got there, believe it or not. So kind of going to your point well taken is you had a goal, you had something you wanted, and then we just figure out a way to get there. But I am also fascinated that you're a continual learner, that you still want to keep trying to get better and better and better. And I can go back to always, sometimes Shirley Spork would call me up. She was probably in her 70s at the time. She said, "Now, Kay, Shirley, Kay, how can I get more distance?" We can't keep losing it on this end. So anybody else with another question? Terry, please go ahead.
It's nice to meet you. My question is, I think a lot of us who play and who've played in tournaments have this fantasy of, that 8-foot putt to win the tournament, or, and when you're playing for fun, it's kind of a fun thing, and you don't really have anything to lose. When you're doing it for your livelihood, what's the difference? I mean, I know that sometimes on tour you miss a putt and it costs you $30,000.
You're right. The differences, there are a lot of differences. It could be, your ball hits something on the green or a bad spot on the green. Fortunately, now we can tap down spike marks, but if you make the best stroke and you're confident you made the best stroke, then you can live with yourself. But if all of a sudden, you're just not, what am I going to say, confident with a certain putt, whether it's a right to left 8-footer or left to, or the other way, then you may miss it. So you got to be confident in there and practice those 8-footers.
Mm-hmm. The other thing I could probably say about that too is people start getting ahead of themselves. When she said, "What's the difference between playing with your friends?" The difference is $30,000. Yes, that's probably, depending on who you're playing with. But by getting ahead of yourself, you can't think that if I miss this putt, I'm going to lose $30,000 or I'm going to lose $1, to my friends. So you have to just stay, you just have to stay focused in the moment of what do I need to do to just make the best stroke that I can make, and then you take the consequences afterwards, whether your checking account goes up or your checking account goes down. I'm going to kind of pick on Susan Bond. Take yourself off mute and put yourself on a video, because you also are a player and have known many players. I think you know Susan Bond with the PGA Magazine. I'm sure you've got a question in there, something about playing.
Well, Debbie, I'm Susan Ladd also, and you used to practice at Cypress Creek down in Brooklyn.
Yes.
And I can remember watching you and Sandra Post practicing your short game. And I would say that that has stuck with me because if you saw my game, I'm not known for my length. It's more for my short game. And I think I really owe it to you and Sandra Post for, you know, influencing that part of my game. But I'd also like to just say to all the people on this call, what Kay is doing is outstanding. She's a leader she inspires so many people, amateur to other women professionals. So being a part of what you're learning from her, your games, you got to practice because she's sharing you what you should do. So now you guys just need to take it to the course and practice. And I think that that's what I like practicing. You practice on the range and you play on the golf course. You know, when you're on the practice tee, you can take your time, figure out how to use your alignment, you know, always pick a target. It's always funny when you ask someone, what's your target? And they go, the range. You want to narrow it down a little bit, you know, and then take it to the golf course, take those experiences and have fun. You know, I don't think any of us on the screen are going to be trying to make that putt for 30,000, but just trying to, you know, just think positively, and hopefully if you don't make it, you only have a tap in to complete the hole. You're not, you know, stressing out on the next one. But kudos to everybody who works with Kay and Eloise for all you do.
Susan, you're great. Thank you. Thanks for popping on and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I think you're absolutely right about the short game and practicing that. And Sandra Post is another great player and stuff like that. But kind of in a couple of closing remarks, I think Susan brings up a good point of saying, tell us a little bit of how much you did practice. I mean, you started out by saying I did the same thing. I mean, I'd get to work and I'd be there at 4 o'clock in the morning, but you said 8 o'clock till 9 o'clock at night. So a little bit about practice, but about the purpose of practice. And we'll kind of close with a couple comments from you on that.
Basically, lots of short game, and Susan's right on. 65% of your score is short game, ladies. So, you know, I used to do all kinds of things around the green, and also, you know, I would go out and hit some irons and then, you know, woods and then drivers. So I think the scores will come down if you're better at your short game, period.
Perfect. All right. Well, I want to thank everyone very much for being on. Great questions. And Debbie, my friend, you are absolutely awesome. And I've got people in the chat saying you need to write a book, and I couldn't agree more. So maybe that's our project for it. We'll work on this together for your book while your knees getting better and your shoulders getting better over the next maybe 8 weeks, something like that. So let's a round of applause for Debbie. Thank you very, very